Welcome to the Beyond Bound Coach and AD Professional Development Series, a weekly online professional development for athletic administrators and coaches. Join us as 6 former ADs now employed by Bound and with over 100 years of combined experience discuss topics important and beneficial to ADs and coaches. Join us on this journey of professional growth. We're here to help you take your coaching and athletic administration to the next level and beyond.
Hey, welcome back everybody to our 5th installment of our Beyond Bound series, professional development for ADs and coaches by ADs and coaches. I think you've probably met everybody on our call, since I think I'm the last one who gets to have a presentation. And believe me, we didn't save the best for last. So don't get your hopes up too high.
Yes, I did, Joey.
All right. So today what I want to talk about, well, first of all, as an introduction, we've got a unique panel here. We're all former or current athletic directors. We want to talk about things that matter to you. We know you don't have a lot of time, so we keep this brief, maybe 10, 12 minutes each time, so that you can move on with your day and maybe hopefully take something away that you can apply for yourself, for your others, for your community. We just want to make you better, give you a little something to talk about and maybe a laugh about. As I said, my name is Joey Struwe. I've been an athletic director. I'm retired now. I was an athletic director for 27 years. I spent 37 years in education. I was a varsity basketball coach for 10 years, an assistant coach for 17 years. I actually coached cross country for a year. They didn't like that, apparently. So I was a bus driver, network administrator in my educational career, taught driver ed. So I've done a lot of different things, worn a lot of different hats in addition to the coaching and athletic director world. So hopefully maybe I can share one or two things that I've learned, that I've done, and that we've done that can help make your life just a little bit better. What I'm going to talk about today are student leadership councils. In our previous editions of Beyond Bound, we've talked about things from how to take care of yourself and management and leadership. And today I want to talk about student leadership, the benefits that we can get from developing our students as leaders within our schools, within our teams, that they'll carry through, not just for themselves, but for their teams, their activities, and later into life. We're going to talk about some of the challenges that you face when you're forming a leadership council, and some resources that you can use, maybe take away. There are tons of them out there, but I'm going to give you a few of them today, and then we'll bat the idea around just a little bit and hopefully give you some good ideas. Some of the benefits of student leadership council is you're developing leadership skills among your students. Now, we always talk about coaches being our leaders and how we develop our coaches and how they work with their students, but how can we as athletic administrators develop students so that they can take that leadership skills to their teams, to their student bodies, to their families and their communities? We want them to demonstrate those skills that we teach them. We've got captains on our sports teams, our football teams, volleyball, basketball, all those things. What do they do? How do they lead? Just because you're a captain, what does that mean? You get to wear a C on your uniform, maybe, or you get to wear that armband in soccer. What does it mean to be a captain? What do they do, and what skills do we give them to do the things that we want them to do? The biggest thing that I found when I formed my captain's council was that it gave me a reconnection with students again. When you move into an administrative role, you lose that connection because you're removed from the students. You're not in a classroom. You're not in a practice every day. And that was the biggest thing that I think I lacked, was that daily connection with students and athletes. And when I had my council, not only did we meet as a group, but those sports who were in season, every week I had those kids come into my office just to sit down. Let's talk about things. What you say in here in my office stays in my office. If you want to talk about things that are going on your team, that you can talk about issues with the coach or with students, as long as we've got, I always kept it, you have to have a solution. It's not a bitch session. You can't just come in and complain. What can we do? If there's a problem, let's identify it, and then steps that we can take to help make the problem better, because that's what we want to do, is we want to make things better. So it reestablished that connection for me. Some of the challenges that you face are how much time do you have? I mean, you're adding another thing to your plate. We've already talked about stress management and how we have to delegate and how we can alleviate things. But if this is something that you crave, you'll find the time. A lot of times I find out I had to do it before school, because not only is my time a challenge, the time for your student athletes is a challenge, because who are you selecting for your captain's council? And how are you selecting them? Who are you selecting? You're probably selecting the students who are involved in multiple sports, in multiple activities, probably in AP courses or in student council or all kinds of fine arts things that they take up time too. So where do your students have time? Not only you, but you have to be mindful of the students. We would go early in the morning. Sometimes we met over a lunch period. We'd find a common lunch period. We'd bring our lunch in and we'd sit down and we'd talk over lunch. Another challenge is, how do you select your members? You've got a lot of good kids, but how do you whittle it down to those ones that you're going to focus on so that they can take those messages back to their teams? You're kind of training the trainers here is basically what we're looking at. So there's some of the challenges that I faced when I was starting my captain's counseling. How do you structure it? When do you do it? Let's talk about some resources. There are some free resources that you can use to help with your captain's council. One of the best ones that I found for training that I used in the summertime with my incoming council for the next year was the NFHS leadership courses. They do a great job of walking kids through the skills that you need to become a leader and what you do in leading others. And they're things that they can do at their own pace on their own time. They can stop, they can come back, they can keep doing it. We've got coaches in some states who are required to do the NFHS courses, whether it be the fundamentals courses or the first aid courses or the concussion courses. Some states require those. So I think most people are familiar with all of the different courses that the NFHS has out there, many of them free resources. And these are but two of them that I used in my captain's council that were really good. And the students really enjoyed it. We beg, borrow, and we steal from other people. That's what ADs do. That's what coaches do. It's not plagiarism unless you don't give someone else credit for it. If you're given credit for it, it's not plagiarism, right? So I reached out at that time to Mike McGurk from Missouri. He had tons of resources. I know Scott's got tons. You probably all have tons of resources that you use, that you gather to help gain ideas from how you structure, how you hold kids accountable, and what activities you could do. The NIAAA has a couple of courses that you could take for developing student leaders and centering your educational activities around students, and how do we focus on them? How do we get them to become leaders? Jeremy Boone does a Desire to Lead program that I took my captain's council through. It was during the pandemic. We went through that, and it was very good. It's a Desire to Lead program that we got a scholarship for, so it didn't cost our kids anything. We'd meet once a week. We'd go through all kinds of scenarios, identifying what your strengths and weaknesses are so that you can build upon those strengths and develop your weaknesses so that they become strengths. That was another one we used. Jeff Jansen's Leadership Academy. He has a book titled Team Captain's Leadership Manual that we used as a reference. And he has tons of resources on his website. So jansensportsleadership.com. The website is there. You can find those and use those as well. One of my other favorite activities that we did during the pandemic was we did a book study, and we also did a Zoom call with John Gordon for my captain's council. And that was one of the better things that we did. It was a little bit spendy, but well, not terribly. I found a sponsor for it. If you go out and you look for resources and those things that are worth it, that was worth it, especially at that time when the kids were all at home. They didn't have any connection with anybody else. So we connected that way. They really enjoyed the book study of the hard hat, but I think their favorite one was the coffee bean. All of his books are easy reads. They're easy to do with your captain's council because they don't take a ton of time to do the prep work. But then I'd have the kids rotate leading the next meeting. You're going to lead our discussion. Who's leading the discussion next week? Who's leading the discussion the following week? And that helped develop their skills too, because some of them, even though they're a team captain, they lead in different ways. They all have a different personality. They all need something different. But one of the skills that I think is common is their ability to communicate with others. Whether it's, they're not comfortable getting up in front of a group, they didn't have to get up in front of the group. Let them, if you're comfortable sitting down, if you're comfortable wearing your hat, it's not a formal thing. These things are just, you have to let their personality come out in what they're doing. And then I had them follow through with that same lesson with their team. And I talked to the coaches into giving them 10 minutes, 15 minutes a day or a week at the end of a practice. I want them to gather their team. I want them to go through the lessons that we talked about in our council. That way, I could help ensure that they were taking it back to their team, training the trainers. And we always enjoyed our community service projects together too. Every fall, we would do a yard cleanup. We'd get together, we'd sign up there would be an elderly person or somebody who couldn't clean their own yard, rake it, clean up the vegetation, all those kinds of things. And we get together, we'd go do that in the morning, then we'd go have pizza. Packaging meals for the needy at Thanksgiving time. Harvest for Hope project that one of our local grocers had. We'd go package up the things for them and take them out to those who couldn't use them for Thanksgiving. So those are some things we did. There are tons of service opportunities out there and different things that you can do. Those are just a couple of them. All right, and now the meat and potatoes of our segment, discussions and thoughts. I'm just going to start. I'm going to go clockwise around my screen. Scott, you're up first.
Yeah, this is great, Joey. I was writing some notes down, and this is probably one of the best things I did as an athletic director. I felt like I could still kind of be a coach. And it really led me back to Aaron's discussion on horizontal leadership and how we really use that time to have our kids, teach them what we needed them to do. So many times we put that, Joey, you just said it, we put that C on their chest and we send them out there and here we go. And we really don't give them the tools to do that. And I always would tell our kids, you don't have to have that C on your chest to be a leader. There are so many different roles within a team that are so important. And that's from the all-state starter, all-star rock star player to the last kid on the bench. And, it takes a mix of kids. And Joey, you talked about that process of finding who could be on that committee. And my coaches would inevitably always bring their top star athletes to be on that. Mm-hmm. But I would also try to find those fringe kids that I felt were good kids, but probably were this close to jumping off the cliff at doing dumb stuff. But I'd try to bring them into that mix too. And just the importance of that time that is spent with kids is so important in building that culture. Talking about those issues that you can be proactive as an AD and catching things going on in your department that you might not know if you took that time and spent that time with kids. And that relationship you build with kids is so amazing, and how that can just completely change your culture. And then the last thing I thought was just when you do this with your student athletes and you do this with your coaches and you take time to put them in the same room and they come up with their common core, what they believe in, and you let that, that opportunity just kind of grow as you intentionally bring them together, it can completely change your culture. So thank you for sharing this, Joey. This is so important for our ADs to put something like this together.
Thanks. Brian?
Yeah, hey, great topic. This was always a tough one for me because of the time. Like you said, Joey, I did it. I started doing it, 2013, 2014. I took kids through 4 years. So each year built upon the other year, and it was strictly voluntary. I did not want to make them be there unless they wanted to be there. But I told them, your coaches cannot choose you to be a captain. It doesn't mean you're going to be, but you cannot be chosen to be a captain unless you've gone through those 4 years. And I hit some roadblocks here and there, but the biggest one was time, because all the kids that wanted to do that stuff were also the kids that were out for everything. They were the lead in the play as well. And so we tried to use advisement time, but that stole a little bit from the teacher. So that was always my struggle. But I think one of the first things you said, and it hits me every time, because when I was coming through school, coaches yelled at us all the time, be a leader, go be a leader. And then, when I first started coaching, that's what I said too. They did something wrong, go be a leader. It wasn't until I thought of it like this is a true skill. It's like shooting a basketball. It's like dribbling. It's catching a football. It's a skill that needs to be taught, and it's on us. If we yell at a kid to say, be a leader, and we've never taught him that, that's on us, not on them. And so I love when you talked about kids coming in and having to be solution driven. Joey, that's huge. Don't let them be the victim to their circumstance. Tell me how we can fix this. Tell me how we can get better. And then the last thing I really liked, and I wished I would have heard you talk about it before, Joey, because I like when they went back to their team. I never did that. That's an awesome idea. Ask the coaches. They need 10 minutes a week to talk about what we talked about. Take it back to the team. Give them time to practice that skill that you're doing. So great topic, Joey. Love talking about it.
Thanks, Brian. Aaron, you're up.
All right, and to find my mouse there again. Great stuff, Joey. One of my sweet spots. I've loved the student leadership topic and stuff. And one of the things I loved about it, and I became super intentional about when I was working with my groups, was we would spend the way I was doing. I had two sessions, and during the first semester, we focused on leading themselves. And I kind of approached the students from this standpoint. You can't give on to others what you don't possess yourself first. You can't lead others through handling adversity if you don't know how to handle adversity well yourself, or don't understand how you manage adversity and move forward from it. And so we spent a lot of time in the first semester talking about how do you handle the beginning of a season, the goals, the excitement, the energy, and how do you react to that and harness that? How do you handle adversity? How do you handle winning? How do you handle losing? How do you problem solve? And we worked on developing those skills of how do you lead yourself first, so that you understand how to manage those situations as they come up as a leader, before you can then turn around and see it in other people and help lead them through adversity, lead through how do we handle wins, how do we handle somebody new coming to the team, et cetera. So I think that's something to think about as you put this together, is because like Brian was just saying, you can't just say, okay, you're in a leadership council, now go be a leader. They've got to understand and lead them how to lead themselves first, and then they can go on to leading others. So I think working those two sides together, never forget they've got to develop first and understand on their side. But great stuff. I agree, Brian. I love the idea of taking it to the team. I think that's a super idea as well. And the last thing you talked about, the time as an AD, and that was something I always struggled with. But for me, that reconnection, Joey, you talked about, was always worth it. You just got to know the kids better. And that connection felt good again as an AD when I started doing these leadership development, student leadership things. So great stuff. Love it. Great topic.
Thank you. One of you yesterday, pretty sure it was one of you yesterday, posted on social media, in order to be a good leader, You have to be a good follower, something to that effect. Who was that?
Got to be Jarvis.
I
Jarvis.
Yeah, but that speaks to exactly what Aaron was saying. You have to be a good follower in order to be a good leader. You have to understand what that takes. All right, Mark, you're up.
Well, Joey, this is awesome. And I have to admit, I'm probably guilty of not doing this. And the time factor is why. As assistant principal and athletic director, I just struggled to find time for something that's really valuable like this. And so I would encourage anyone out there to not get caught up in maybe what I did is get caught up in the lack of time excuse and not do much of it. Can't say I didn't do any, but I didn't do it as organized as you did. Anyway, a couple thoughts I had as you were talking, and Scott hit one that really was important to me. And I think it's good to have, pull in that negative leader too. They're leaders. They're just choosing to lead in the wrong direction. And you can probably steer them back in the right direction through your leadership skill development. One thing we did do while I was in my role was we kind of had an informal group I would call the sportsmanship group. I'm not sure they even knew that's what it was, but we wanted to make sure that the behavior at ball games was appropriate. And so you visit with kids and try to train them on, from what they're going to wear dressing up to cheers they're going to do and their behaviors and so forth. We always pulled in somebody that, was ready to step over the line. But they were a leader, and it was amazing how it would kind of curb their ambition to go the wrong way and funnel it the right way. So I think that's something important out of this. And then also, I've kind of questioned always why football coaches always have captains, and they have such a role for those captains and things they do, and they train those captains, but a lot of times your other sports don't. And so I think we could learn from football coaches to have a leadership group in basketball or soccer or whatever else it might be.
Yeah. One of the things is funny you say that, you pulling in those student leaders. One of the benefits that I saw that was an unintended consequence was at a ball game, you with that a little bit better connection with the student body and the students, they would ask me, hey, can we do this cheer? Or if they'd start one, they'd look over at me.
Yeah.
'Cause they knew I was watching, and I would either nod and then they'd, so it's a lot better relationship that you have with them. And instead of just walking over there and saying, knock that off, you're being knuckleheads. So they started to police themselves a little bit, which is great, which is what you want. You want them to be self-aware.
Yep.
Yeah. Todd, your turn. Best for last.
I don't know how you wrap up around all these great minds that have already spoken, but I'll try. I would say the biggest thing I would encourage people to do is just start. You can't, there's never a good time. There's never a right time, but you got to start, and you can't wait till it's perfect to start it. That was my downfall in doing these things. I was looking for the perfect time, the perfect curriculum, and finally you just got to start, and then you just adjust, you adapt, and you overcome, because that's what we do. But you got to start. And I would encourage anyone, it's December, I'll wait till 24, 25. No, you've got kids in your school right now who need you to start next month or in February. My first year at Greene County, I started it in March. I can at least get 9 weeks in, and just start, because those kids need you. There's so many negative things going on out there. They need you to be a voice of positivity and encouragement, and we need to develop these leaders. And even if it's just for 9 weeks, start and go from there. Find your time. It's unique to your school, but you need to find your time because those kids need you. And time is always an issue, but I've always said, you know, we say that we may not be able to find the time, and I don't know if it's worth it, but you know what? You can't afford not to. You can't afford not to. You've just got to make it happen. And I just encourage you to go do that with your kids because they need you.
Yeah, that's a great point, Todd. Your kids need you. And with that, we'll wrap up today's episode because you need to get back to your kids. They need you. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.